The big new movie in the summer of 1943 was This Is the Army. It was based on Irving Berlin's Broadway show of the year before and featured 350 real GIs.
They asked us lots of questions. They jabbed us in the arm. We stood there at attention, our faces turning red. The sergeant looked us over, and this is what he said.
This is the Army, Mr. Jones. No private rooms or telephone. You had your breakfast in bed before, but you won't have it there anymore.
This is the Army, Mr. Brown. You and your lady went to town. She had you worried, but this is war, and she won't worry you anymore. No, she won't worry you anymore.
By that summer, they were drafting 18-year-olds. Young grocery clerks, laborers, boys fresh out of high school were sent off to some jungle or desert and told to win a war.
He's not so handsome, he's not very tall, and in the smart set, he's nothing at all. He was the first one to answer the call, that soldier of mine. Oh, there at the station, I tried not to cry. I kept on smiling while waving goodbye. I know he'll come back, that wonderful guy, that soldier of mine.
See these two blue stars? You put a blue star in the window if you had a son in the armed forces. If he were killed, the star was gold. They did it for daughters, too, and plenty of daughters were killed in World War II. Plenty of black Americans were killed also. Maybe their mothers got separate but equal gold stars. Come back to the summer of 1943. Come back to the fight for freedom, this time in Detroit.
In a moment, our world continues, with Americans together and apart in the summer of '43.
Welcome back to the summer of 1943. Most of us bore up under the hardships of rationing, committing no sin worse than griping about it. 12 points from your red stamps for a porterhouse steak, it said. Try to find a porterhouse steak, or a hamburger for that matter. My father qualified for a B card. He was an insurance salesman, so gas rationing was no problem in our house. Nylon stockings were gone for the duration, replaced occasionally by liquid leg makeup, painted legs. Being 13, I considered that an improvement. But if you had $5, you could buy a pair of nylons on the black market. Money could buy you anything. About 25% of all retail business was black market business. So, all of us were not pulling together all the time, and some of us were pulled apart.
If we were fighting for truth, justice, and the American way, then it must be pointed out that racial intolerance also was part of the American way that summer of 1943. Imagine, if you will, a red cross that classified its blood into colored and white. Imagine a sign reading colored bomb shelter. That is the way we were, which is why the time was so ripe for a riot. The riot would come. It would be ushered down the aisle by an America that told its black people to swallow their racial grievances and lay down their lives for their country, but lay them down separately. On the surface, Americans seemed to stand united during the war. The truth was, we still lived and fought apart.
Legions of colored troops, dramatic, living symbols of America's solidarity, America's unity of purpose.
Yes, the forces that fought for freedom were segregated. But so was society, especially the South. And so more black people moved north, hoping to find jobs in defense plants. They got jobs in factories like Ford's Willow Run bomber plant outside Detroit.
By the middle of 1943, 50,000 blacks had moved to Detroit. But the housing, well, these prefab units weren't much to look at. There weren't enough of them. And blacks weren't welcome. Not surprisingly, the blacks were boxed into the slums of Detroit. Ironically, the name of this particular ghetto was Paradise Valley. Something had to happen. Something did.
June 20th, 1943 was a hot, muggy Sunday. 100,000 people were jammed onto Belle Isle, a big recreational park in the Detroit River. About 10:30 that night, on this bridge connecting Belle Isle with the city, fights broke out between blacks and whites. Nobody knows how they started. They do know that rumors amplified those fights into one of the worst race riots in this country's history. It was said that blacks had raped and killed a white woman. It was said that whites had killed a black woman and her baby and thrown the bodies into the river. None of that happened. What did happen was 24 hours of terror and madness that left 34 people dead. The initial rioting was in Paradise Valley, where blacks ran amok, looting and burning businesses owned by whites. By the early morning hours, whites were retaliating, running in gangs, capturing and beating any blacks they found. The Detroit police force, nearly 99% white, was overwhelmed. Raymond Miller was a detective at the time.
I'm one person who was right out there during this worst race riot, in my opinion, in American history. We had instructions that day not to shoot, not to kill anybody unless we had to. The mayor at that time and the police commissioner were very considerate. They didn't want anybody killed. And as a police officer, I didn't think much of it. My friends didn't think much of it. I think that they were just felt like they were being held back, stopped, hindered from going in there and breaking up the riot. It was so violent that it was not safe for anyone to be on the street.
Moses Fritz was a funeral director in Detroit.
Anytime a white would be caught in the area, why, a group of these thugs would grab him and beat the dickens out of him. So I saw one fellow across the street. They had taken a beer bottle, smashed it, and with that cut bottle, they just, oh, my Lord, it was awful to what they did to his face. And here he was coming with blood just streaming everywhere. It was a pitiful thing to see. But now that was in the colored end of the neighborhood. If you happened to go across Woodward Avenue, dividing between east and west, well, the Negro was caught over there, the whites did the same thing to him. So it was no man's land over here for blacks, and over that was whites. And one should not pass into the other's district.
The pure hatred of it all shocked policeman Vincent Piersanti.
My feeling is that that was really a race riot. It was based solely on race, not on what you had or what you did not have. It was race against race. White gangs and small groups of young white men would roam the streets looking for a black to savage in some way or another.
Julian Witherspoon, a student, was savaged by the police.
I made a statement that this is like Hitler's Germany. I didn't say it softly, you know. And you can't, walk a block without, being stopped and searched. And there's no need, we're not coming from anywhere would indicate that we were plotting, any wrongdoing or anything of that sort. And I walked into why, this is Young Men's Christian Association, mind you. So anyhow, this trooper shoots through the door, and it caught me in the side and the back here.
Everybody was in a combat mode, and combat mode doesn't lend itself to cool thinking and deliberate actions.
Well, see, there was no need for this shooting. There was no need at all for this shooting. There was no provocation. There's no resistance.